My name is David Roylance. I was born in the USA, Washington, D.C., and I started out in the business world and doing information technology, and then opened up my own business eventually, moved away from that into sharing the teachings of the Buddha. And now I teach here in Chiang Mai and all over the world, helping people to understand the path to enlightenment as taught by the Buddha, where the mind can be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And it's a permanent mental state where you don't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings and others are eliminated when you train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And there's other benefits as well. When I was having my own business, I was teaching Thai massage, which I did that for about 10 years. I was teaching Thai massage. And as part of that, I was kind of dabbling in Buddhism and teaching a little Buddhism with it, but I wasn't teaching the same things that I'm teaching now, because now, having moved here to Thailand in 2015, I deeply understand the teachings of the Buddha. So by 2018, I started teaching again, and I started sharing the path to enlightenment based on the original words of the Buddha. Rather than sharing Thai massage and a little bit of Buddhism, now I just teach the teachings of the Buddha solely. All through my life, I lived a very hostile environment growing up. So I remember as early as age 8, being in my room crying and upset and not understanding why I had so much love in my mind and in my heart for other people, but I wasn't receiving that from the people around me. So I was always interested in something better and having a better life and a more peaceful and loving life, but I didn't know how to do that. So all through my life, I struggled and had difficulties. And at different times in my life, I kind of worked on growth and things like this, but I would have never called it spiritual or Buddhism or any of those kinds of things. But it was just trying to be a better person. But I didn't have the guidance that I needed to be able to understand that until I understood the teachings of the Buddha. So as I was going through life and having difficulty after difficulty after difficulty, problem after problem after problem, I decided that I was interested in something better. And that something better was the teachings of the Buddha that helped me to train my mind to get to a point where there's no more anger or sadness or any of those other discontent feelings. Yeah, in 2018, my mind had become so discontent and highly unmanageable that was the catalyst for me to decide that I needed to make significant changes. And that's when I dove in headfirst into the teachings of the Buddha and decided that I was going to figure this out. So in 2018, my mind was just really unmanageable.
So from your point of view, what does it mean to be spiritual, or what does spirituality mean? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit about it.
I don't think about spirituality. That's not something that I talk about or something that I even use in the vocabulary in the way that I teach, but I know a lot of people do. They think that, this type of thing is spirituality, but the Buddha never taught that way. He always taught about training your mind. It's not about any kind of spirit. He never taught that there is a spirit or there isn't a spirit. He never discussed this. The same thing with the soul. He never discussed whether there's a soul or there isn't a soul. So it's all about training the mind. And some people look at that from a spiritual sense. But in my opinion, sometimes spirituality can be based in beliefs, where the teachings of the Buddha is not based in any of that. It's through real, tangible, practical, logical understanding of the natural laws around you. And now when you gain that wisdom of these natural laws in the world, then you apply that in your day-to-day life through training your mind and making wise decisions, and you see wholesome results through the condition of your mind drastically improving and through your life improving as well.
Then one question arises, are we our mind?
We are not our mind. Oftentimes the mind is trying to grasp for something to hold on to and cling to and say, this is who I am. But this is what we refer to as personal existence view, where the mind is clinging to a self-image or a self-identity. So clinging to the body, the physical body, or clinging to the mind itself, thinking that this is who you are. But as soon as you cling to that, As things change, then you're going to be having difficulties. So, for example, I know that you were born in Germany, I think, right? Well, if the mind has the identity that I am German, then when people say something fond and agreeable about German people, you'll be very pleasant. That'll produce pleasant feelings. But if somebody said something degrading or disparaging about German people, then you're going to perhaps feel diminished or degraded or frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And that's the mind clinging to either the self-image or the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And what the Buddha teaches you is that there is no self, that none of this stuff is you. So the idea of I am American, or I am a Buddhist teacher, or I am a husband, or I am a father, any of this I am around your culture, ethnicity, sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. If you're like in a relationship and you think I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend, well, you feel great. But then when you separate, if your mind is still clinging to that identity, I am a boyfriend, but now you're single, your mind feels very lost and confused. And you might feel like you want to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. So the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to any of these things as who you are, including the mind itself. But the way that you can understand this is much like a computer. A computer has a CPU. That's the central processing unit of the computer. And nothing else can happen on the computer if the CPU isn't functioning properly. So your mind is the CPU of this being, who you are. So this CPU, if it's polluted, if it's not functioning well, then this being isn't going to function well either. So as you purify your mind, everything you experience in life is coming through that. So you can drastically improve your life and your outlook on life and the way you experience life through actually improving the quality of your mind.
Can you answer this question? Who are we really beyond our physics, our body, our mind? What are we?
This is the mind grasping for an identity and wanting to hold on to something. We can describe that this is a human being, a certain physical body and a certain mind, but when the mind's trying to grasp about who am I, this is the mind's ego, trying to have some significance in the world. Because if you go back to prehistoric beings, human beings, cave people, they most likely weren't asking these kinds of questions. They were basically just looking for modern survival or common survival, right? They were interested in what foods can we eat, how can we get shelter, how can we get warm, can we clothe this body, what can we do, right? They're just trying to figure out this world. And they didn't even really have much speech back then, right? They were just kind of grunting and moaning and pointing. They weren't the most dominant creature on the planet. There were other creatures that were much more dominant than the human being. So those beings were just looking out for their survival. They weren't trying to think about who are we, what are we doing here, why are we here. They're just trying to figure out how do we survive and how do we evolve as human beings and become better and better human beings. And that's where we are today. But we've evolved so much and we've become the dominant creature on the planet, and we've really systematized a lot of things like food production. At one time, everybody had to get their own food, but now we've systematized that. At one time, we had to make all of our own clothes. But now we've systematized that other people take care of that for us. So we find ourselves with all this extra time in the world, and to the point where people will just surf social media or other things like this or do other unbeneficial things. And people are looking around like, gosh, there's really nothing here for us to do. Well, that's because we've systematized everything. We've modernized everything. We've organized and combined our abilities to make it so that you don't have to make your own clothes and you don't have to hunt your own food and get your own food and forage your own food and harvest your own food. All these things are being done for you. So you have all this extra time to do other things. And sometimes people sit around and contemplate like, what's the significance? Who are we? Where in reality, there's really nothing here. If you just get rid of the ego of wanting to be significant in the world and trying to leave my mark on society, instead, just work on being a good, wholesome human being that's living harmoniously with other beings, very peacefully and very joyfully. And now just navigate the planet being peaceful and joyful. And this is more than enough to be satisfied and fulfilled. And now when you go out into the world, You can help people, you can do things that are beneficial for the world, but you're not going out there with an ego of who am I and how can I leave my mark on society and I need to change the world. This is a very big burden to carry around if somebody does that.
When you look at the times, the history and whatever, we are in a special time right now.
This is a very important time in history, but not everybody realizes that and understands that. But this is an opportunity for massive numbers of people to be able to make their way to this enlightened mental state where we can awaken as human beings and we can evolve as a species. Just like the lizard and the snake and all these other beings will evolve, and they have been evolving over time, human beings, we've evolved in terms of our ability to systematize things and live, with modern conveniences, but we haven't evolved our mind. We haven't evolved the actual human mind. This, in my opinion, has actually been degrading over time, where now we have the ability to be able to train the mind and evolve as a species where we don't need to experience anger and sadness and frustration any longer. So as this wisdom comes into the world that the Buddha shared and it becomes more and more prevalent and people gain this wisdom, more and more massive numbers of human beings can stop being angry and feeling guilty and shameful and being bitter and harsh and hostile and feeling stress and anxiety. They can eliminate that. Where nowadays people have kind of adopted the thinking that they've just kind of assumed that this is the way things are. We're just going to be stressful. This is every human being perhaps might have a certain thinking like that, unless the mind has gotten to enlightenment or the mind understands enlightenment, then we can understand that not every human being experiences stress. Not every human being experiences anxiety or anger or sadness and frustration. There is an escape out of that, but that wisdom has been kind of locked away for a really long time inadvertently, because here in Asia they understand training the mind, but they're not out in the world trying to convince other people to do it. It's up to individuals to decide to come here or invite us to them, where now they can learn the wisdom to evolve to this better and better human being. And as a parent or an adult, if you learn this within your home, and then if you decide to share it with your children, if they're interested in that, or maybe other community members or family members or people like that, this wisdom just has a ripple effect that as it moves throughout the world, more and more people can learn how to get rid of the anger and the sadness and the frustration and all those discontent feelings. And as a species, we all evolve to this better and better way of being. As long as the mind is having anger and sadness and frustration and all those other discontent feelings, the mind is shaken up. It's unstable, it's unsteady. And now you might be pushing people away out of your life, thinking that they are causing you the anger, when in reality that's not the case. Or somebody might be bitter and harsh and hostile, having difficulties in their relationships and having broken relationships over and over and over again. Or they might be putting their expectations on people and trying to control people. And with these discontent feelings, the mind is shaken up and the mind makes unwise decisions. And it leads to unwholesome results in your life because you make all these unwise decisions, you put that out, and now all this unwholesomeness comes back to you. So if you get to a point where your mind's steady and stable and focused and concentrated, all your relationships are harmonious, and you're functioning as a better and better human being, now when you go out into the world, everything can be so enjoyable. Instead of being disgruntled and angry and agitated and making an unwise decision after unwise decision, broken relationship after broken relationship. Instead, you can go out into the world and live peacefully and harmoniously with all beings. And now you can have a very fulfilling and satisfying life instead of this life that's some people might describe as being in the darkness.
How can we overcome the fear of death?
Sure. So everybody is going to die. Because we were born, we have to die. This is impermanence. Things are going to constantly change. So the idea that there is eternal life somewhere, this isn't possible. But this is what leads to a fearful death, potentially, is somebody's holding on to life, wanting that to be permanent. So as they get close to death, they fear death. Or they might fear any kind of physical pain associated with death. Or they might have fear of what's going to come next, particularly if they've done a lot of unwise things in their life. They might really fear what's going to come next after death. But the way to eliminate any kind of fear around death is to eliminate the craving for permanent existence and having an understanding of what's truly going to occur. What's going to occur is that if somebody is unenlightened, they will experience rebirth. They will come back into the world, either into the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, which is the ghosts, the human realm, or the heavenly realm. And none of these realms are permanent. Beings are moving in and out of these realms all the time. And it's more and more opportunity for you to cultivate wisdom and evolve into a better and better being. So if someone's unenlightened, they will experience rebirth with additional opportunities to continue to come back into the world and cultivate wisdom. If someone is enlightened and they die, the Buddha doesn't talk about what comes next. This is an undeclared teaching. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is so peaceful and so joyful, it doesn't matter what's next. So this path to enlightenment, it isn't about believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good when you die happens. It's not about an afterlife. It's about getting to peace and joy now in this life. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have any fear at all, including the fear of death. And the way to eliminate that fear is to eliminate the craving for life. So in addition to all the other tools and techniques that the Buddha shares to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments, the one that helps you eliminate your craving for existence is you do what's called contemplation of death or reflection of death, where you sit quietly, you close your eyes, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you envision that you've died. You kind of play that out in your mind. You're not aspiring to die. You're not wanting to die. You're just imagining as if you have. Maybe you've been in a terrible car accident. Maybe you died of cancer. Maybe you just died in your sleep at night when you went to sleep. Whatever it is, you kind of play that out, and then you play out all the subsequent steps too. Maybe there's a funeral. Maybe there's a burial or a cremation. Maybe your family's grieving, perhaps. There's all these different things that are going to occur, and you play that out in your mind over multiple sessions. You might do this once a month or once every 2 weeks. And you might even grieve as part of this process. You might have sorrow. And if that's the case, you're triggering that craving for existence. And as you trigger that, you'd like to cut it off and let it go and train your mind to come to terms with the fact that this body is impermanent. Because death is going to come and visit every single one of us. And we can wait for that to happen, and it can sneak up on us and catch us by surprise. Or, since we know death is coming to visit us, we can go to visit death. And that's what contemplation of death is, or reflection on death is. You're going to visit death. And you're saying, hey, I see you over there. I see you're going to come visit me someday, but I'm not going to be interested in you coming to surprise me and catch me off guard. I'm going to come visit you. And now you go visit death about once a month for a few months, and you'll eventually get to the point where you're completely comfortable with it. And you know that that's what's going to occur, and you're not holding on to this world. If you're holding on to this world, material possessions, relationships, life itself, then death can seem very fearful. But if you understand that this is going to happen, and you've confronted it and played it out in your own mind, you can get to the point where you're completely comfortable with it, and it doesn't shake you up anymore.
How do you react when there's people coming with you and they tell, oh, I have so many problems, I'm so angry, my mind is completely confused. Where do you pick them up? Where do you point to help them out of this really, really huge problem they believe that they have?
Sure. So I never react to anything. I'm always responding to something, right? You're always thinking through what you're experiencing and then figuring out what's the best way to respond to this that is going to be wise and helpful and beneficial. So it's normal that students will come and share all their personal challenges and difficulties. They're learning a lot of how to take care of a lot of them through the classes, courses, and retreats, through the videos and books and podcasts and other resources that I share. But on personal guidance, sometimes they ask those kinds of questions, or even in an open class, they can ask about certain personal challenges. And in all situations, it's just that the mind lacks wisdom about certain aspects of the world. When they cultivate wisdom, then they can overcome whatever challenges they're having. So while a problem can seem very monumental to the person who's experiencing it, they will perceive the problem as being something external. They will think the problem is mom or dad or their boss or their siblings. But in reality, the problem is within one's own mind. And when I bring them to understand that and help them to be able to see that and then provide them the wisdom of how to overcome it, then they can get to real solutions and real results. So oftentimes people are taught to change other people, and that's what's going to bring them the peace and the joy. But you can't change 8 billion people to do things your way. So what the Buddha's teachings are doing is it's teaching you how to improve the condition of your mind through cultivation of wisdom. So all I need to do is look for what aspect of their wisdom are they lacking. They're lacking some wisdom. So sometimes when someone comes to me with a problem, I will ask them certain questions to be able to uncover what is the wisdom that they're missing, and then I provide that to them, and then let them to learn it, to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and then practice it to be able to see the truth so that they can see that through this new wisdom, they can make different decisions that lead to different results. Because whatever thing that you're perceiving as a problem in your life, it's just, like I mentioned, from a lack of wisdom, but there's certain decisions that an individual is making that is leading to this outcome. And if they can uncover and see what those unwise decisions are that is leading to this particular unwholesome outcome, then just make different decisions. So if there's anything that you don't particularly care for in your life, you just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience a different result. But if it's everybody else that's causing these problems in my life, then I'm locked in. I can't do anything to solve it. Or if it's good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or if it's some being that's controlling us, then you're locked in. You can't fix anything. But when you don't subscribe to any of that, and you're able to see the truth that everything you experience is a result of decisions you're making, well, if there's something that you don't care for in your life, cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. And this is how you gradually improve your life and the condition of your mind as well.
So how can people contact with you, with your work, if they want to know more? Maybe you can tell us what to do.
Yeah, the best place is to go to our website. That's like a central hub, buddhadailywisdom.com. If you go to that website, you'll be able to get connected to the online classes, the in-person classes, the free books and videos and podcasts and live streams and personal guidance and all the things that you need. And it's all available at no cost for students.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.